diminished scale is good for playing patterns like that, and it's a bit of a cliche at this point, but you know, even Coltrane did some of those. Some of those diminished scale patterns, and you can do them like sort of groups of three, kind of things like that. The one that I did is just a pattern that you start on a note. You know, this one goes down a whole step, and then you could think, if you're thinking intervallically, down a whole step, up a fourth, down a whole step, and then repeat it through the scale. And this one goes down in minor thirds. As guitar players, it's kind of easy if you were taking it up like that, or if you were taking it down. So it's kind of easy to play those patterns and just repeat it down 3 frets at a time, which kind of gets into the cliche territory, but people do it. I mean, it's a cliche because it works. It's a cliche because lots of people have played it a lot, so it's worth knowing. I wouldn't like run that one into the ground every time I get a diminished chord or a dominant with a flat 9, but it's kind of a cool one to know. Even, I don't want to say even, but Michael Brecker has his lick. Everybody's got their licks, right? Even Charlie Parker had his licks that he would play. So licks aren't bad, but they're bad if you play them every time you get a certain chord type. You play that same lick, so you end up playing it 4 times in one tune. That would be bad. But again, if you find a pattern. That's just a kind of as a guitar player, a shape. So you can run those, and I'm just resolving to C major because, you know, G13. You can run those shapes up and down, and it's a cool thing to know how to do, but again, don't do it every time. I heard another Brecker thing, and he said the danger of playing licks like that is that you might actually use them in a tune, right? So don't be like pattern guy, but it is cool stuff to know, just to get it under your fingers and learn this stuff. A great way to use these guys is off the flat 9, the 3rd, the 5th, or the 7th of a dominant chord. I studied with a guy named Ray Brown, who's a trumpet player, not the bass player, in Santa Cruz, California, and he had a system of using diminished scales. When you've got a dominant chord that resolves correctly, in other words, it goes 5-1, you can use this formula. If you start on the 9th or 7th of your target chord, so in this case, a C major 7 chord, if you start on the 7th or 9th and just go straight up a diminished scale, you will land, and you play 8th notes, you will land on the 7th or the 9th of the C major chord, which might be super cool to do. So using Ray Brown's system of when you're ascending, start on the 7th or 9th of the target chord again. So in this case, if we're going G7 to C major 7, you're going to start on the 7th, which is B, or the 9th, which is D, and you're just going to go straight up a diminished scale. So I think this is why Ray came up with this stuff, because you are just playing a straight up diminished scale, and if you think in terms of the target chord and you play 8th notes, you'll land on a good note on when the chord resolves. So if we're playing, here's another G13 flat 9 voicing, and you know, if you go to that drop 3 voicing, then you're down there. Here's a C major 9, B, E, G, D, rootless. Let your bass player play the root whenever possible, unless you're playing solo, and then you do the Tal Farlow. So on a G13 flat 9, I'd probably just play this. This is a rootless or imaginary root B, G13 with a flat 9 on it. So I've got B, F, A flat, and E, and that would resolve nicely to C major 9. So I'm going to start on the 7th, which is the B, which is right here, which is kind of cool because it's part of my chord, and I'm just going to go right up a diminished scale, which for us is that 2-string pattern, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. But I'm playing 8th note, so I'm only going to get 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. And now I've landed on the B of my C major chord, so it's going to sound really great. Instead of landing on the root of a C major chord and getting that kind of sound, landing on the root of a major 7 chord in your solo can sound a little bit clashy, because if the comper's laying down a heavy B, C major 7 it's got a strong B in it, like maybe on the top of the voicing or something, right? If he's got this as a C major 7 and you land on that, you're gonna have that B and C sound right next to each other, which you might love, and it might not be the right thing to do. So it depends on if you're playing with a vocalist, and you could get ugly. We've got our G13 with a flat 9, and I'm just going to go up, but I'm only going to get up to the B where I started. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and back on beat 1, and that's where the C major 7 chord resolves. So it's kind of cool because you're playing 8th notes, and you start and end on, you start on a good note that's good with the G chord, and you end on a good note that's good with the C major 7 chord. So it's sort of like magic. So that's starting on the 7th, and then we could also start on the 9th, and we'd end on that. Right? So there's other, this is the magic fingering because it's easy and you stay in one position, and it's 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. But you should definitely learn the other ones too. There's lots of other little wiggly fingerings that you can work out. So from your G7 chord, I think it's kind of easy to pick these two. I think most people can find that 3rd of the chord, and then this is the 5th of the chord, right? So it's pretty. You can think. This brings me to another thought. You can think in terms of the starting chord or the target chord. Ray always says think in terms of the target chord, because then it makes it a little easier to make sure you land on a good note. So we're starting on the 7th of the C or the 9th of the C and playing 8th notes. When you're ascending 7th and 9th, those are notes that are high in the chord, right? As opposed to the 5th and the 3rd, which are low in the chord if we're spelling the chord 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So 7 and 9 are high in the chord. If you're descending, you can use the, you can start on the 3rd or the 5th of the chord and descend. And one thing that's interesting is you're always going to start with a whole step. So when you go up, you're going to go whole step, half step. When you go down, you're going to go whole step down and then half step. So back to our, we could do it up here. This was G13 flat 9 going up. Oops. And then we could do G13 going down. So this one might work better with that root on the 6th string, visually anyway. Kind of a cool one. And that's from the 5th of the chord, and then from the 3rd of the chord, you're going to end up with a shift there. But you can hear how that works nicely over this guy. And then you could even... So the rules, Ray Brown's from Cabrillo College in California, in Santa Cruz, California, Aptos, California actually. His rules are as follows. If you have a dominant chord that's resolving correctly, it's going 5 to 1. And it's a dominant 13th with a flat 9, sharp 11, any combination thereof. You can ascend, starting with a whole step up a diminished scale, starting on the 7th or 9th of the target chord that you're resolving to. If you're descending, you can start on the 5th or the 3rd. You're also going to begin with a whole step and then alternate whole step, half steps.